Hello everybody and welcome to this presentation entitled Supporting Your Child's Executive Functions and Executive Functioning. And my name's Colin Foley. I am the Training Director for the ADHD Foundation, and it's my pleasure to be delivering this presentation for you. And thank you very much for giving up the time in your busy lives to engage with this. As I've mentioned, I'm the Training Director for the ADHD Foundation. We are the largest patient-led ADHD Neurodiversity Charity in the whole of Europe, and we have been working in partnership with the Witherslack group for a number of years now, and it is a special and important partnership for us. So it's my pleasure to be working again with the Witherslack group, a great organisation and a great group of schools throughout the UK. So this presentation, everybody, is going to look at what we call executive functioning, or the executive functions. Now, if you can see the screen there, you can see our social media platforms and you can see our website address. If you are inspired by this presentation and you'd like to find out more about the work that we do, or that you are affected by ADHD in particular in any way, then please go to our website, because there's lots of resources, as well obviously as the Witherslack group website, which I'm sure you are very familiar with already. But just for a bit of information for you, if this is the first time that you have engaged in a presentation that's been delivered by somebody from the ADHD Foundation, then welcome, hello, thank you very much. You may, if you've heard other presentations that I've delivered for Witherslack in the past, you may have heard me say what I'm about to say, so please be patient with me for a minute. But if you are looking for further information, particularly around ADHD, then we've got these series of booklets that are free to download off our website. So you go to our homepage and then you just type in information booklet, and we have a booklet there, particularly the one on the left that you can see, particularly for parents and carers of children and young people with ADHD. We have one for adults if your son or daughter is an adult, or indeed if you have ADHD yourself. There on the second on the left, we have one for teenagers. In the middle, the one on the right is an activity booklet for young children, primary age children, and it is very positive, and it is about encouraging your child to see their ADHD as something positive in their lives. And the one on the second right is one for teachers. And feel free to let your child's school know that this is there, and that they are welcome to download it as well, if that might be appropriate. We also have a series of comics. Now, if your child is about 7 or above, we think that they might enjoy these. It's called the Umbrella Gang series of comics, and they are positive representations of young people who have what we call neurodiverse conditions. So it's not just ADHD. There are characters in there with autism, with Tourette syndrome, with dyspraxia, for example. So it's all about the adventures that these young people get up to. All of the characters in the comics are based upon some of the young people that we work with within our organisation. Now, these are also free to download off our website. And you can see, if you make a quick note there of the link that you can see, or just type in Umbrella Gang into our website, and then you'll get access to them as well. So there's just a few resources that we have that you can get for free if you've got particular interest in ADHD or neurodiversity. Okay, right, so let's get stuck in. If you've listened to any presentations that I've delivered before for the Witherslack group, then you've probably heard me mention executive functioning. Now, what does this actually mean? Now, your executive functions are the way in which your brain plans, organizes, and regulates itself. And the executive functions are housed at the front of your brain, in the frontal cortex or the prefrontal cortex of your brain, or what we can see on the diagram there in yellow, sorry if you're colorblind, the part of the brain that's on the right where it says the frontal lobe. So it's the front of your brain. And we know that if your child has a diagnosis of autism or ADHD or dyspraxia or Tourette syndrome, then the executive functions are really quite important to consider and to understand. And when we think about neurodiverse conditions, there are some cliches around, aren't there? Dyspraxia is all about clumsy kids. Kids with Tourette syndrome just may have tics, either physical or vocal tics. Kids with ADHD just can't pay attention. Children with autism just want to be on their own and they don't want to interact. These are all cliches. And there's much, much more to all of these conditions than the kind of the stereotyped images that we have of them, and sometimes that we see in the media as well, unfortunately. And one of the broader challenges that are associated with neurodiversity is challenges within the executive functions, the way in which we plan, organise and regulate ourselves. So, to understand executive functioning, we have to understand that it's like a top-down system. So everything that comes into your brain, all of the information, all the lots and lots of information that comes into your brain all day, every day, and goes to different parts of your brain to be processed, what you do with all of this is your executive functions. So as you can see in the top box there, your intelligence, what you know, right, is all around your brain in different areas, okay? But what you do with it, how you use what you know to achieve your goals, takes place in the frontal cortex, and that's your executive functions. So if you have a look at the quote in the bottom box there, executive function is a set of skills that allow people to control their behavior and direct their behavior towards longer term goals, getting things done, rather than doing what is automatic or easiest to accomplish. These cognitive abilities, cognition, all to do with thinking and thought, needed for goal-directed behavior. So, in terms of your child, it is how your child is able to inhibit their behavior, their impulses, their emotions, their attentional system, how they can control that in order to then plan and organize towards getting things done. Now, just have a think about this. How is your child in terms of their ability to plan and organize? And we'll talk about some of the ways in which executive functioning difficulties might present in your son or daughter in a minute or two. But let's just focus on what they actually are. Because when we understand that it's about goal-directed behavior, getting things done, well, there's a lot of features to this. And the first one is what we call task initiation. For example, if your child's got ADHD, you may well be aware that your child might be a massive procrastinator, putting off and putting off and putting off things that your child is not immediately interested in doing. And then you might see, for example, that the activities and tasks that your child likes to do and really engages with, there's no problem in getting started and getting stuck in and having a go and planning things. But difficulties when they're not immediately interested. And this is called task initiation. This is getting yourself into a position with all of the environment and the resources that you need to actually begin something. Now, at the same time as this is happening, we are also doing three things. We are controlling and inhibiting key parts of our behavior and actions. We are controlling our attentional system. I'm not going to pay attention to that over there because I'm going to pay attention to this here that I have to do. My impulses, well, my impulse is to go outside and play. My impulse is to talk to somebody else. My impulse is to pick up my phone. No, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to focus upon this activity and get it done. And also, if I'm feeling angry about something, if I'm upset about something, if I'm frustrated, if I've got emotions going on in my brain at the moment, and I've got big feelings, I'm going to put them to one side. I'll think about them later, and I'll focus. I'll inhibit and control those emotions in order to get things done. Now, just think about yourself, everybody. Think about yourself when you've got to do things that you don't really want to do, when maybe you're a bit stressed or a bit anxious, or you're up against the clock. You know, you've got to do something very, very quickly, or you're not feeling very well, or your mental health isn't great. Okay, we can see difficulties for ourselves in the executive functions, can't we? For our children who might be neurodiverse, these challenges will be constant and persistent, okay, in different settings with a range of different activities. So once we've got ourselves into a position where we can start, then we have to start to plan it, don't we? So we plan, we prioritize. What should I do first? In what order should I do this activity? And how do I manage my time to do this effectively? Now, we know that time and the awareness of time can be a challenge for children who are neurodiverse. A friend of mine who is an ADHD coach and has ADHD herself, she describes herself as having time blindness, which is not a phrase that I particularly like, but it explains it very, very much. So when you say to your child, for example, come on, you've got to do this, and we've only got 20 minutes to do it, and your child does nothing for 17 minutes, and then just really goes at it for the last 3 minutes, that's not to say that it can't be brilliant, of course, what your child does in those 3 minutes, but they might have a poor concept of time. They might be saying, I've got loads of time, Mum, I don't have to do it right now, I've got time to do this. And you're thinking, well, no, you know how long it's going to take. You know that your child needs to manage their time more effectively to have success. And then the organization of what we do, the actual doing, the sequencing, the ordering of information, if that involves different types of information that your child needs to do a task. It also includes the ability to be flexible. Now, this means that this is both flexible working and doing, but also flexible thinking if the nature of the activity changes. So your child has planned something, has started something, but it has to change. Some children who are neurodiverse will have challenges with this. We know, for example, that this is particularly an issue for autistic young people, having to change once I've started something and I've put something into place. Also, another key executive function is the ability to monitor yourself as you're going along. How am I doing? What else do I have to do? Do I have the time to do this? I was a teacher for 25 years before I worked for the ADHD Foundation, and I used to notice this a lot. Talking to children who are neurodiverse, and I'd say, where are you up to? And they would look at me like I was talking in a different language. Often with ADHD, for example, children can very much live in the moment. They get very, very focused. And we see this with autism as well, very, very focused on the immediate thing that they are doing and can lose the big picture of what else they have to do. So you say, well, okay, do you really need to spend that much time on that activity because you've actually got 3 other things to do after that? So the ability to self-monitor yourself. How are you doing? Now, if we look at all of these collectively, they all hinge upon and rely upon this next one. That's why I put it in a slightly different color. Again, sorry to the colorblind. Number 7, there you can see working memory. Now, just let me explain working memory to you. There are lots and lots of different types of memory. We know we have emotional memory, sensory memory, verbal working memory, non-verbal working memory, short-term, long-term memory, okay, eidetic memory, literal memory, literary memory, okay, visual memory. We have lots and lots of different types of the way in which we remember. But the one in which that I really want you to consider in this presentation is working memory. Now, working memory is linked, of course, to the executive functions because it is your ability to hold information in your brain and at the same time do something with that information, particularly goal-directed behavior. So it's about planning and organization. Let me ask you this, everyone. When was the last time that somebody, maybe in work, somebody was giving you a job to do or giving you a lot of instructions or telling you a lot of information? And as they're telling you, you're holding what they're saying in your working memory, but you're also planning what you're going to do with it at the same time. So you're listening and you're thinking, right, okay, I've got to do this. Well, I know what I've got to do for the next 2 days, so I'm going to have to do this at this time. I'll need these resources. I'll need to speak to this person. I'll have to go back and look at that email, right? And this is all happening at the same time. Your ability to hold information and your ability to plan from that information simultaneously at the same time. And what we know is that many children and young people who are neurodiverse can face challenges in this area particularly. This is when you have to keep reminding your child over and over and over again. Okay, this is when you're helping them with homework and you know they've done something similar in the past and they just can't remember it. And it's like you're starting again with a particular piece of homework. Okay, so we have quite a large working memory capacity, human beings. So if you're neurotypical, if your physical and mental health is good, you can hold between 8 and 10 pieces of information in your working memory at the same time for up to 30 to 40 seconds. So it's quite big, but it's quite fragile. Right? Information goes quite quickly if we don't process it, if we don't do something with it. So it's the ability to hold information and do something with it at the same time. Okay, and you might be noticing this as a difficulty for your son or daughter. Now, the executive functions in everybody start to develop at about 18 months to 2 years of age, and they carry on until the early 20s. It isn't until somebody is about 22 to 24 that their brain becomes fully adult. So this notion that we have that 18 equals adulthood isn't really backed up by neuroscience, because technically you're not still you're not an adult fully excuse me, until you're in your early 20s. So your son or daughter's executive functions will be developing right up until that age. Let's just have a look at what would be typical development. All right, so between 1 and 3 years, in very young children, we will begin to see inhibition, inhibitory control, so my ability to inhibit behaviours in order to do activities, and we'll see the beginning of working memory, a very young child being able to remember and hold information in their brain and do something with it. As they move on up to 6 years old, we begin to see what's called cognitive flexibility, so their ability to think differently and think in different ways. We'll begin to see goal-directed behaviour. I want this, so I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to get this. And we begin to see their ability to plan. Mistakes might still be made, might still be made, and it is age appropriate, of course. Remember, they are very young. So between 6 and 12, right, we have a significant period of development in terms of the executive functions. So verbal working memory, the ability to remember what you have heard and what has been said to you, starts to increase significantly, as does goal-directed behaviour and response inhibition, your ability to inhibit. But selective attention, I'm going to regulate my attentional system, I'm going to ignore all of this around me and do this, becomes much more proficient up to between 6 and 12. Strategic planning, organizational skills, we start to see some of this. This is in neurotypical behavior. Also between the ages of 8 and 10, particularly, we see that cognitive flexibility really beginning to increase as well, thinking differently for different purposes and different reasons. And then, of course, you know, after the age of 12, then these keep developing and developing up until the early 20s. Now, what we know is that executive functioning difficulties can be associated with a whole range of different neurodevelopmental conditions. So Tourette syndrome, we know impulse control, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, we know working memory is an issue there. I've mentioned flexibility with autism, oppositional defiant behaviours, or indeed oppositional defiance disorder. We see obviously that difficulty with controlling emotions there that can in many cases lead to anger. With ADHD, of course, we see that attentional control and emotional control, and of course the impulse control can be a real challenge. But if you look at number 4 here and number 6, we can also see this in children who experience brain injuries or concussion, for example, but also mental health issues, for example. So a child who is highly anxious might start to have difficulties with a range of executive functions. Now, I just need to make the point here, everyone, that there is no kind of blueprint on this. All children are different. The way in which their neurodiversity will present is unique to them. Everybody's brain is unique. Okay, so you might see with different conditions, for example, certain executive function strengths. If you think about autism, for example, the ability to create a plan, to stick to that plan, to work through it, where you might see a degree of prioritizing and goal setting and rigidity there with youngsters who are autistic. But they might have other challenges in terms of, for example, flexibility, the ability to change what you're doing and move away from that plan that has been decided. So different conditions their executive functioning skills and challenges are unique to that individual, but might be different depending on the condition. But what we do know with certainty is that there will be executive functioning challenges with all of the neurodevelopmental conditions. Okay, so a lot of information on this slide, I know, but just have a quick look through, everyone. So we've got some of the executive functions on the left here, and we've got in the middle what it would look like in a child or young person when their executive functions are strong and secure, okay? Obviously in an age-appropriate way. Just have a quick look down there. How is your child at the moment? Where do they fit within that? When we look at the column on the right, this is what it looks like when executive functions are less secure and that where there are challenges. And we see, for example, with the second one down, finding criticism hard. With the fifth one down, might get upset in school if they get a bad mark. We see the beginnings of what's called rejection sensitivity, which we know is a feature of ADHD and autism, where children find criticism difficult, where they have a stress response to getting things wrong, for example, and being told that. But you might see some of the other features there. Loss of organization right at the bottom, losing things all the time. And we know that with ADHD, object permanence can be a challenge. Object permanence means that where there is an object that a child is using is only of use in the immediate instance. And when they've finished using that object, it's gone. Okay, so these are children that don't put their stuff away. Again, they don't tidy it up, ready to use something later. It's just discarded. Don't need that now. It's gone out of my consciousness, and I'm moving on to doing something else as well. So you might, if your child has a diagnosis of ADHD or autism or dyspraxia or Tourette syndrome, you might be recognizing some of the features on the right. Now, what's interesting, of course, when you know your child, is when you look at that on the right and think, well, actually, there are some parts of that my child's quite good at. Okay, there are some parts that are really difficult for them. And that's where we get this uniqueness of each neurodiverse condition and each individual. Let me give you some other examples, everyone. So difficulties planning projects, shifting from one activity to the other, setting goals, requires many reminders to complete an activity or a task, gets frustrated with changes in a schedule or not usual routines, difficulty controlling impulses. So your child might say and do things without thinking about them and can get themselves into difficulties, are easily distracted whilst doing an activity, often talks out loud while doing an activity. Now, this is very, very common. It's called subvocalizing, right? And it's very often, it's that a lot of neurodiverse children need to externalize their thinking into words, because when we speak, when we choose words to communicate, or even just choose words to speak to ourselves out loud, we are sequencing and organizing our thinking. So I would really encourage you not to shut your child, not to try and shut your child up at that. If they're narrating themselves as they go along, let them. It will be helping them to do that activity. Does your child have difficulty initiating things, thinking of things to do, starting things, or generating ideas without you or other people helping them? Do they focus on a particular issue to the detriment, of everything else? or if they've just got this, I want to do this, I've got this big idea, very common with ADHD, big vision. And when you're trying to say, well, okay, then that's great, how do we then put that into practice? They've got less interest or get easily distracted from the smaller detail. So that can go both ways. Okay, struggles to keep track of materials, things that they need. Is your child always looking for things, not remembering where they put things, for example, or not even thinking that they might need it until they get to that part in the activity, and then suddenly it's, oh, I need this. Okay, where is it? Okay, so that was a very quick introduction to executive functioning. So just to summarize, everybody, it's around goal-directed behavior. Well, what are all of the skills that I have to put in place through the frontal cortex of my brain, the executive functions? What are the skills and actions that I have to do in order to get things done? Everything from how do I start, to how do I monitor myself all the way through it? How do I hold the information that I need in my brain so that I can keep focused on what it is? Okay, so now that we've talked about it, let's just have a little quick chat about what you can do as parents and carers to support your son or daughter in this. And I've said this before many, many times when I've delivered presentations for the Witherslack group, but it starts with you. You are the best role model for your child. How you manage things, how you address difficulties and problems, how you plan and organize your life, obviously is going to be a significant influence on your son or daughter. So your style of planning and organization sets the climate in your house. Your style will model for your son or daughter. You will be a huge influence in terms of them copying what you do, but also the beliefs that you hold will determine your style. So if you think, right, well, my child can't do X, Y, and Z, therefore I've got to do all of that for them, take away that, then you are unconsciously communicating, aren't you, to your child that, you know, you don't believe that they can do it. Okay, so why should they? This is where we start to see learned helplessness. Just do it for me, Dad. You know, but if you believe that your child can do this, right? They might need some support. It might take a little bit longer. They might have a lot of repetition along the way. But if you fundamentally believe that your child is capable of doing this, and they are, right, that style, that belief will impact what you do, but will communicate hugely to your son or daughter. A really clear message that I'm not going to do it for you. I'm going to be here to support you. Okay, and I'm going to be here to refocus you when it goes wrong or you become distracted, but you are going to do this, all right, and you are going to encourage them to be able to plan and organize themselves. Let me give you a quick strategy that you might want to use. All right, so if you are planning something with your son or daughter, okay, especially if it has a number of different steps to it, you know, let's say tidying up the bedroom, and if the bedroom is particularly messy, then your child might just think, oh, that's too overwhelming, I can't do that. They just think very, very quickly, there's too much to do, it's going to take too long, don't want to do that, not interested. Okay, a nice strategy, of course, is to create an image, a mental visual image for your child of what it is that you want to do and what the room might look like when it's tidied. What we know is that what's called acoustic encoding or auditory processing is a weaker skill with neurodiverse youngsters. So you telling them something, right, and expecting them to kind of hold that and to be able to see it and do it, right, is one of the weakest forms. It's much more effective for you to convert what you want into visual images. Okay, so visualize with your child, right? Ask them to create a mental visual image of the task that is going to be done. All right, use their personal memory. So when have you done this before? When have you done something like this before? Let's talk about this. Okay, that's called semantic encoding. When you encourage your child to think about something in relation to something that they already know. It's one of the most powerful ways to support their memory. Okay, so use their personal memory, their personal experiences, and then do something called episodic future thinking. Or if anyone's feeling posh, okay, mimetic ideational information processing, which is where you imagine yourself. Children who are neurodiverse, particularly ADHD and autism, they can have challenges in this area when you say, tell me what you're going to be doing. Tell me what it looks like when you finish this. Imagine yourself in the future. And then involved in some what's called mental spatial time travel. Let's imagine moving through the activity. What are you going to do first? Right? What are you going to do second? What's it going to look like when you're halfway through? Right? And what you're then going to have to do in order to complete. This is helping your child to set a goal. This is what I'm going to do for the next half hour, and then this is what I'm going to do for the half hour after that. Setting a goal, but then prioritizing what they're going to do. And you might want to, depending on the age of your child, you might want to then start talking about some time limits on this. So, okay, let's do this. How long do we think it's going to take? Do some time estimation activities with your child. Maybe use timers to help them if timers don't cause a lot of anxiety, because some children get very anxious and it becomes counterproductive. But if your child can handle that, then go for it. So go for a bit of mental spatial time travel. Let's imagine ourselves, what are we going to do on Saturday? Let's go for a trip. Let's organize the trip together, or you organize the trip, right? And I will help you. Okay, so what does it look like at the end? Let's work backwards from that. So if we're going to be in that place doing that activity, what do we need to have done before that to make sure that we are there at that time and that the activity is successful? Have a planning friendly household. I would say have a plan for everything. Talk about planning routinely. So what are you doing this evening? Oh, I want to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, so what's your plan to do that? Okay, how's the plan going? Where are you up to with the plan? Use the word plan a lot. Okay, really put organization, put transitions front and center. So when things have got to change, when you are moving from one activity to the other, are you thinking about this? Have you got a plan in place for what the challenges could be for your child? But are you talking about to your child using the word transition? So we're going there, and we're doing that for this amount of time, but then we've got to go and do this. So let's talk about this. How long is it going to take? What do we need? How are we going to get there? The environment, of course, and I've said peripheral distraction down there as well. Let's have a think, especially if you want your child to focus and concentrate on an activity for a length of time. Let's think about what is it in the environment or what is around your child that could potentially distract. This, of course, is really important when we talk about homework and supporting your child to do homework. Where do you do the homework? Where are the distractions, and how can we reduce them as much as possible? And I always talk about, if you're going to support your child to develop their executive functioning skills, that you almost become their frontal lobe substitute. You help their organization and their planning. You are there as their support to step in and be their frontal lobe at times if that is what they need in that moment. Visualizations or externalizations, I call them, are really, really important in this process. So do you have, as a family, have your calendar? What is on the calendar? How much information do we need on the calendar? So is it just about school and homework, or is it about everything else? Out of school activities, extracurricular activities, but being able to look at this. I always remember a friend of mine she's got twin boys, one of whom has got ADHD. I mean, they're adults now, but when they were children, I just remember her big planner on the wall and her kids saying, I want to do this, I want to do that. And all she'd say was calendar. And they'd walk over to the calendar and she would have that conversation with them. Well, you can't do this because look, we're doing this instead, and have those conversations. But also, you know, this isn't, I've got an example for you on the screen there, but it could also be, you could also include time to prepare, time to get ready. Of course, you could have specific times for that. You could have a planner that's very, very flexible, and you could have include on that planner what equipment, what things do we need. I know that a friend of mine, her son was always forgetting stuff to go to school with. So she worked with the teacher, this friend of mine, and the teacher had backup pens, backup calculators, a backup PE kit, all of this ready and good to go when her son would invariably forget different things that he was supposed to take for school. There were signs all over the house. A really effective one was the sign just at the front door, which was, have you got the following before you leave? You know, when they were very little, there was a sign in the bathroom for the morning and the nighttime routine to make sure that they brush their teeth and they comb their hair, for example. So it can have as much information as is required. But it's really important. What's important about this, of course, is that it's there, it's constant, and it's visual. So you're taking all that information out of their working memory. There's no expectation for your child. It needs to remember what they're doing in 3 weeks' time, because it's there and it's held for them. So it supports those challenges with working memory. Okay, I often use the quote, everyone, externalize what is not happening internally. Just as I've just demonstrated with that planner chart, is take out of the brain what is not going to be there effectively. Prioritize this and prioritize time management and time estimation. And remember that the more you ask your child to do at any one time, if an activity involves a lot of different steps, that will lead to what's called cognitive overload and memory overload. They won't be able to hold all of that information in. A friend of mine, for example, when her daughter was quite young, and her daughter had autism and ADHD, she would often say to her, you know, go and stand at the top of the stairs. And the daughter would go and stand at the top of the stairs, and she'd shout, I'm at the top of the stairs, Mum. And then she'd say, right, go to your bedroom door. And she'd do it in stages like that, because if she'd said, go upstairs, go into your bedroom and get X, Y, and Z, she said there'd be no chance my daughter would be able to do all of those things. She will probably do the last thing, either the first thing she'd heard or the last thing that she'd heard. So break it down so you're minimizing the amount that your child has to process at any one time. Lots of repetition of skills or activities. You know, there is a theory called the one and done theory. Can I just say I don't agree with this? And that means that if you've done it once, then you can do it. So you've seen your child do something successfully and you think, well, that's it, I've seen it now, they can do it. No, what's really going to help your child is what's called repetition or retrieval practices, where we go back over and over and over again. And recall strategies can be really good with this, and group information. So you could say, right, we're going to your grandmother's. What are the 4 things you've got to remember to go into grandmother's? Okay, and so if you do it in 4s, so, and every time you go make that journey, do that trip, you're giving a few pieces of information. If you've got them on cards, even better. If you've got them up on the wall, even better. But if it's what's called a recall strategy, so it's something familiar that you use constantly with your child, you can, you know, do it, keep repeating it for fun, make it into a rhyme or a rap, okay, or a poem, or number it, anything with a pattern to it, the pattern to the sound, the brain is more likely to process that. But also really prioritize their self-management as well. And one of the things that we haven't really got time to talk about in this presentation, of course, is that many neurodiverse children and young people can be very highly anxious, and anxiety is a block in the brain as well. Anxiety will make it more difficult for your child to remember or to plan and organize. So what are you doing to support your child if they are anxious to reduce that anxiety? What do they do to relax? How do you encourage them and facilitate them to begin self-management strategies and relaxation strategies for your child? The less anxious they are, the more likely it is that you will have success with some of the strategies in terms of supporting their executive function in there as well. Okay, and also what we know is that multi-sensory approaches work well with neurodiverse children. So if you've got an activity that you want your child to do, think about presenting it to them in a number of different ways. So we can talk about it, we can show you some images, we could do a demonstration, we could try a bit, we could do something practical, we could draw the activity, we could write it, if your child likes to write, we could write the activity, or we could act it out or do it. Use a number of different means, right, to present the same information to your child. Multi-sensory approaches, so they can look at things, they can read things, they can listen to things. The different senses are being utilized here. Also, this is a resource that I know that a lot of parents that we work with use, which is Stop, Think, Plan, Do. Okay, or you can lose the plan if your child is very impulsive, and you can just go stop, think, and do. And it's a very easy to understand and easy to remember 4-step process. Okay, to right then, this is what I want. Right, stop, think, plan, and now do it. Okay, and if you're using this regularly with your child, they can get into it. You just say, a friend of mine just says stop, and his son says think, plan, do. I think that's when they go into, that's when they go into the discussion about what it is that they want to do. Any planning, externalized planning support and resource can be personalized, of course. But the reason why I've included this one on the left, everyone, is that right-hand column. It's very important that we have immediate, instant reward for youngsters who are neurodiverse. So it's about being able to tick it off. Think about yourself, everyone. If you've got a to-do list, how great is it when you cross things off your to-do list and you feel like, yeah, great, I've accomplished that. It's exactly the same for your child. So use rewards, use reward processes, give them some kind of facility to say, great, you've done that bit, what's next? All right, or planning sheets, planning resources for school, broken down. This one includes the evening as well, so we can start similar to what I was saying before in terms of this can include time for getting ready, time for gathering materials, time for getting a shower, getting changed, all of those things that your child, if they've got poor impulse control and poor working memory, won't be thinking about. I just want to go here. Well, actually, you need about an hour's preparation before you go there, for example. Also, if they've got poor concept of time, you can include how long it will take to travel between different things. And this is an activity that some of our therapists use in schools. And what's nice is, of course, that children have ownership of it, but they can create their own clocks and they can write on the clocks. They're very, very easy to do. They get some paper plates. And they can begin to break down blocks of time and think more constructively to support that executive function of time management. Or organizational aids, key rings, little fobs on key rings, on their keys, if they've got their own keys, with reminders on it, or little credit card cut-out sheets that go into pockets with reminders of things that they need to do, or equipment that they need to get and to use. This one is lovely, the I Can Do. If you just Google this, just Google I Can Do. But what's nice is, of course, that there's reward built into it, very visual images, particularly for younger children. And it's about making it fun, but also giving them that sense of achievement when it's been finished. Weekly target sheets. Now, what's lovely, this is not a planning sheet, this is a target sheet. So it's about what do you want to do? That executive function of goal setting. What are your goals? Okay, and how are we going to realize them? I used to do this a lot with students. Wasn't often over a longer period of time than weekly, but it's what you want to achieve this week, what you want to get done. Let's get it down on this sheet. Let's start to break it down into its component parts, and let's think about how we plan and organize this. Okay, so I know that this presentation has only been quite short, but I hope that you found something in here that is useful to you. Just to finish, everyone, I just want you to just have a look at some of these recommendations in terms of books and resources. If you're interested, if you want to make a quick note of some of them here, I would particularly recommend the last one here, which is Late, Lost and Unprepared, which is a lovely title, but it's a particular guide for parents, and carers to help children with their executive functions. Late, Lost and Unprepared, if you type that into Google or Amazon to get that resource. So my best wishes, everybody. Thank you again for taking the time to engage with this presentation, and my best wishes to you and your sons and daughters in terms of supporting them effectively with their executive functions. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.